Me.
Okay, now you can hear me.
Yeah.
I had my mic muted the whole time.
Oh,
That's
Neil
terrible.
had his mic muted. I mean, one of those technical glitches.
Oh,
Whoops.
I hate that.
Oh,
You know,
whoops.
and the whole reason why this happened is again because we had to relaunch.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, so I'm sorry about that, everyone. You know what we need to do, and I hate doing this, but we're gonna have to relaunch the whole show again.
Yeah, okay.
Uh, yeah, that's
Yes, no problem.
kind of bad. And again, sorry. I'm a little bit flustered, I guess, because we did launch the show, but we had to relaunch because we were having problems with the chat. So hopefully everybody can hear me now. So I'll put out. Can everybody hear me now?
And we'll just do a relaunch. So if you just kind of click back on the link and you'll.
Well, I mean, we don't have to actually relaunch the show.
Oh, okay.
We'll just relaunch what we're talking about.
Oh, okay. Our talking points, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So I really apologize. That's terrible, actually, that we've gone this long. And
Oops.
so,
It's one of those little bloopers.
yeah. So maybe just reintroduce what we're talking about today, Brent.
Sure. I'll just pull up my notes here, everyone. Yeah, sorry about that. One of those technical glitches. This happens and keeps us on our toes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So today we're going to be talking about the definitions of disability language. Speaking of definitions, synonyms versus antonyms. That's number one. Number two, we're going to be talking about disability social versus medical model. And number three, we're going to be talking about persons first versus the identity of first language. Those are really great topics to dive into today on today's show. I hope you enjoy our discussion. And again, I apologize, just like Neil has mentioned, for any technical glitches that we had this morning.
This is why I always say this, Brent. This is why you should fire me as your producer. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that we had some really serious problems with the chat,
Yeah.
and I was really getting flustered. And that's what happens when I get flustered.
Sometimes the
When we
chat just,
relaunched, I wasn't paying attention to my audio, so that's my bad, and why I deserve to be fired. But anyway,
oh, okay.
let's go to a screen share, and what I was saying when I was muted was I was saying that you know, like where do we go? Where do we go when we want to find definitions of things?
Yeah, for me, I would look under the encyclopedia, dictionary. I'd go to the library. There's so many resources. I mean, that was before Google came out. Of course, now everything's all Google. You can Google this and Google that.
Mm,
But way back before technology really advanced, for me, I'd be at home looking at encyclopedias. We'd have a whole volume of encyclopedias at home.
yeah.
And sometimes I would go downtown into the city and actually go to the library and read up on whatever I needed to find out more information about. If it was a study that I was doing in school, different definitions of whatever it was, and definitely disability definitions. I don't know. I mean, we've come a long way of changing the language speaking of things on how we treat people with disabilities. I mean, we've come a long way from what it was, but we need to go a lot more further but more faster, like more effectively changing things faster. I mean,
Mm,
not like baby steps, but changing the way that we look at the lens of the disability of the language, how people are perceived of, well, are they weak? And then you'll go into all the different
yeah, like that's what I wanted to bring up is like, when you and I were younger, like like I had my encyclopedia set at home too, and if I wanted to find the definition of something, you would go to a dictionary and look it up. And so this is what we're going to do today. We're going to start with the basics and look at how disability and
Mhm.
how disability and disabled, those two words, how they're defined in the dictionary. We're going to start there,
Mhm.
and you're gonna see a pattern. So we're gonna go to the screen share again, everybody saw this earlier maybe, but well, I was muted. So let me go up first here. So here you can see, we're in the Cambridge Dictionary online. There's a Cambridge Dictionary online here, and for the words disabled, we have synonyms, which are the like words, the similar words for disabled, are incapacitated, broken down. You've got handicapped. We'll get to that in a bit. Helpless, mangled, maimed, infirm, impotent, stalled, weakened, wounded, and my personal favorite is wrecked. You're wrecked if you're disabled or have a disability. You're wrecked. And then if you scroll down and look at the antonyms, which are the opposite of disabled, you have words like able-bodied. So of course you can take the opposite of that and say, well, if you're not able-bodied, you're unable, and then you have the antonym of disabled as fit. So the assumption that then is if people are disabled, they're not fit. And then you have an antonym of healthy. So if you're disabled, you're not healthy. And again, you have the word strong here for the antonym, which means if you have a disability, you're not strong. And so again, this is from a dictionary, which is like you can say is a part of academia, right? This is a trusted thing. I mean, you can say like some of Google is not a trusted thing, but you can say, well, here's a dictionary, a Cambridge Dictionary, where you'd have the same kind of word cloud in. If I went to, and I did go to the Webster's Dictionary site as well, but in the interest of time, I just brought up this one because it was nicely color coded with synonyms and antonyms. But if everybody goes to dictionary.com or Webster's Dictionary, all these kind of words are going to be the same, and I can actually bring up a whole other list of words from other sites. Like some of the other words were limited, restricted, powerless, damaged, disordered or disorder, incapable, decrepit, invalid or invalid, detriment, and here's one, disqualification. And again, this is for disabled or disability. Disqualification, defect, lack, fault, inadequacy, or another great one is liability. So look at all the negative terms.
Lots of negative terms
around disability, right? There's not one positive word there to describe disabled or disability. And when we started off the show where nobody could hear me, we talked about, Rick Hansen here. I think everybody knows who Rick Hansen is.
The Man in Motion.
He did the Man in Motion, the Round the World tour in his wheelchair.
Right to British Columbia, BC Place.
Yeah.
In Columbia.
And that was in 1985. He started that, right?
Yeah.
And he finished in I think it was 86 or 87. I kind of forget if it was 86 or 87. But his word that he came up with to replace disabled or disability was physically challenged. And then you have other terms like differently abled too, and you have a word like handicapped, and those are kind of replacement terms as well. But even Rick Hansen himself realizes now that replacement terms don't really work. They don't really. I mean, it's far better to be truthful of what a disability is and just say I'm a disabled person or I'm a person with a disability. And that's kind of more honest, right? If you kind of use pretty language or politically correct language, you're not being truthful, or you're kind of hiding the truth of the hardship of what a disability actually is, right?
It's almost like putting a title on a person with disability. Oh, they're like one of the definitions was invalid, or they're a liability. And it's like, oh, okay, so I'll give you an example to our listeners, our viewers. Okay, so Brent, you have a disability. Oh, I'm a liability. Yeah, I'm Brent with a liability, rather than I'm Brent with a disability. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
Brent with the invalid, incapacitated, or I mean, like, how silly does that sound, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I can't speak for everybody else, but for myself, like, to me, when I was growing up as a child in elementary, I got picked on quite a few times, bullied, right? Yeah, I mean, and for a while, like, it was, some people, some of my the classmates around would say, "Oh, well, there's four eyes. There's four eyes." Oh,
Hmm.
or I guess it must be great to be able to see a lot more now with four eyes, right? And I go, well, one of my teachers says, unfortunately, children are going to not understand, Brent, until they actually be who you are.
Yeah.
And I was stuck in my mind. They said, until they are who you are, you're you're you have a different disability. And it always stuck in that thinking, different disability. That was the talking point, different disability. You're
Yeah.
differently disabled. And I go, no, I'm just me. And I remember
Yeah.
saying, I'm
Yeah.
just me. Like, I
Yeah.
I don't put a show on to get brownie points. And again, so fast forward through life, right? It basically just person accepting the person for who they are, not given like a certain I guess a sticker, putting a sticker on you. Oh, okay, you're handicapped, or
Yeah.
uh,
We have we
and
have we have Melvin in chat, and he makes a
I
couple
know.
of points. He says the biggest problem I'm having is regulations which stop the gatekeepers
Yes.
from giving me my meds. And then he
Yeah.
says I've been called a useless eater, which is
Oh, yeah.
terrible, right?
It is terrible.
But what I wanted to do is I wanted to transition. We wanted to kind of focus on academia today,
Hmm.
like really zone in on how the academics view
Hmm.
disability, because we just looked at a dictionary, the
Hmm.
definitions from Webster and from Cambridge Dictionary, which is part of academia, and they're saying all these negative terms related to disability. So we wanted to kind of, again, keep that focus of like a more academic look at what disability is. And so let's,
I wonder though, Neil, in the dictionary, is there like a terminology in there about like magic, like soundbite words of like more to do when the fiscal situation allows, or yeah, those are all like negative. Those are like
yeah.
negative words, and again, so it kind of blends in what we're talking about today. Like, there's negative words. It's like, get the negative out of the way. Let's look at the positive, but let's
Right.
just look at the person who they are, not
Well,
like,
and this, again, this is why we're doing this show today, is
yeah,
because, and again, I think we missed it because I was muted earlier.
yeah,
But we were talking about the reason why we're doing this show is because I wanted to set up a prerequisite show, because we're going to
yeah.
be having Tamara Taggart on Friday, and
Yay.
we're going to be talking about kind of how disability discrimination happens with government policy. I mean, government will never say it's discriminatory.
Oh, of
That
course not.
government will never say that we're mistreating, or we're treating people with disabilities differently. But the fact of the matter is,
They are though.
policies do that, and
Policies, yeah.
and 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 we'll and so we'll get into that with Tamara on Friday. But
Hmm.
again, I wanted to kind of set the stage for Friday, and we have to kind of pull back and look at what is disability, and why are these policies that we have today, why did they exist? Well, we're kind of already answering that, because if disability is founded, is built upon a negative lens, or a
Hmm.
negative stigma, like all those terms that we just read were
Yeah.
all negative. So if it's all negative already, like
Hmm.
all these policies from government or from employers, it's going to have the negative spin on it already,
Yeah, exactly.
because
They,
because our own dictionaries tell us that, if
they
you're
make the policy.
disabled, It's all like, you're impotent, you're an invalid, you're invalid, you know. And I just wanted to switch over, and we'll talk about the medical model versus the social model of disability, and say why those two things are important too. I think most people that are disabled have heard that term before, or those terms of the social model versus the medical model.
Probably the medical model, I think a lot of people would be probably even more familiar with, because medical versus, like, they'll think social model, they'll think social safety net, or and I look at the medical model because medical model is when a person is medically assessed and designated as a person with disability by their practitioner. They have to go through a lot of different testing to make sure that that they can get onto like a social safety net, where onto a pension, and to make sure that that's why they call it social safety net, because to make sure that they're well taken care of in today's society. But again, policies are embedded way back into like decades and decades and decades ago, where you're right, Neil. It was, I guess, socially okay for governments to look at the negative part and say, well, this equals this, so let's make negative policies. So let's change a pension into a non-pension.
Because the negative already exists. They're already saying if you're disabled, you're not worthy. You're not worthy of a pension. So we'll just take it away. If you're not worthy of something, if you're decrepit and if you're wrecked already, or if you're an invalid already, why should you be deserving of a pension? Or why should you be deserving of any support at all? Because you're just this useless eater, as Melvin said. And so to go back to the medical model versus social model, I just want to restate it. The medical model is when you say that, for example, like I have crutches. I used to have crutches. I can't use crutches anymore because of my injury. But so now I'm in a wheelchair. So the medical model would say that Neil can't use stairs. Neil can't use stairs because he's in a wheelchair. That's the medical model. Or the medical model for you would be, there's no point in Brent going to a movie. There's no point in Brent going to a movie because he can't see anyway. Kind of that's because so the medical model is saying that you're incapable because of your disability makes you incapable of functioning. So there's certain things that you just can't do. Like they're saying, I can't do stairs and you can't watch movies.
Yeah, or I can't get a car and park it out in the parking lot.
Yeah,
say,
right.
No point getting a car for him because he can't see far enough visual acuity to go and drive. So there's no point in getting him to apply for a driver's license because he would be unsafe on the roads.
So that's part of the medical model, is that the medical model disqualifies you based on your condition. It says because you have this condition, we're assuming that you can't do something. Whereas the social model says, well, the only thing that's limiting you is the social construct of, if you had an elevator, Neil, you wouldn't need the stairs. You could just take an elevator, and that's fine. Or and in your case, we could say if you had just more powerful glasses, you could go to a movie, no problem.
Yeah. Or here's another example. I went to an eye doctor once, and I walked out. I literally walked out right. To our listeners and viewers, I went to an eye doctor. Okay, and it was in the community that I lived in. I lived in Langley, and I won't say, I'm not here to throw a eye doctor under the bus, but I've never gone through it in my life. I was livid. I was just beyond stressed and mad. I guess the anger upon me made me just get up out of the chair, literally out of a chair. If you have your eye exam, I literally got the machine, pushed my hand sideways, moved the machine aside. I got up and walked out the door and never went back again. You know why? Because the doctor says, well, we can correct your disability, Brent. All you have to do is sign this form here, and we can send you in for laser eye surgery. I go, they can't correct my vision. My vision is a disease from birth. Like it's non-curable. I said they got top doctors studying my condition right now, and they can't find a cure. That's like trying to find a cure for diabetes, trying to find a cure for cancer. So many other conditions that people have in their lives. Wouldn't that be nice? I mean, I don't know what I would ever do if there was a cure, because I wouldn't change the way I am right now. Like I just know me for who I am. But that's what I went through. And so when I had a doctor saying, oh, well, you can overcome your disability, I got mad and I walked out. And so when you got the government saying, oh, well, we can't give people more to live on, like it's like saying it's fine, the status quo is fine because you are disabled.
Yeah.
I mean, look at seniors though, everybody. The same thing. Seniors on fixed incomes, I mean, they're treated with disrespect too. It's total disrespect. I mean, veterans, I mean, and they have disabilities too, just because they're a senior.
Yeah.
But people before being a senior, I mean, we need to take care of our citizens. We need to recognize people for who they are, not of saying, well, they're incapable, or get a justification like the CDB, just for instance. I'm not going to get into all that on today's show, but barriers have been all put in place to access a fund that was issued 5 years ago by the federal Liberal government. And I'm not going to do the blame game saying, well, maybe it should have been passed in a certain way. I think that all hands should have been on deck and forcing it to be done the proper way when it was told to be done the right way. And then all of a sudden, all these barriers got put in place. Oh, you need to have a DTC. Oh, federally. Yeah. You need to be proved that your disability is still there federally. And why do I know that? I just on the phone the other day, and I talked to the CRA, Revenue Canada, and I had a little discussion with Revenue Canada on the phone. And you know what came out of that? Now everyone's going to be interesting to hear this one. I was told by Revenue Canada, you have a disability in your province. It should be recognized across the board federally automatically because your disability does not go away. We don't have that on file for you, Brent. We don't have a DTC on file for you. I go, no. I go, why? I go, why? Because my practitioner says I'm already disabled. I don't need to be proved to have another disability federally. They said, you are who you are. It should be recognized across the board. That's why my family physician, he's now long retired, but he literally refused to fill it out. And I think a lot of people across Canada who are disabled right now in the same situation as I am on provincial disability assistance are in the same boat. And it's costly. It's for monetary cost, and also for the doctors to fill out all that lengthy paperwork. Yeah. I mean, if you can get it, great. I'm not saying don't apply, people. There's a narrative out there telling people to apply for it. I mean, up to $200 if you can even get it, right? It should be, and initially it was actually mentioned at no less than poverty level. Like that's how it was supposed to be when it first came out.
Yeah, everybody was assuming it was going to be around $600.
It was supposed to be at least a top up to your provincial disability. So I guess my point is that having to prove that you still have more of a disability. Are you more disabled than you already are? Like you already have a disability. Do you want to have to prove that you are more disabled? And that's what was explained by my family doctor at the time. Brent, you never have to prove who you are. You are disabled. You have a disability. You know what your disabilities are, right? I mean, you know better than I do. I mean, I know you, he says, as a doctor, since you were a little infant, right? And, it's, you can't change on who you are. People and government have to accept the person for who they are, and have the powerful words.
Yeah.
We'll get back to.
Well, this is where I want. I mean, you're talking about the medical model mostly there, Brent, and this is where I wanted to also dive into. You have person first language versus identity first language. And it's important to see how that the person first language and identity first language ties into the medical model versus
Yeah.
the social, because they're all it's all connected, right?
Oh, yeah.
And that's why we're devoting a whole show to this, because everything's connected.
It's like a puzzle, everyone.
So now if we talk about person first language, and person first language is when you say person with a disability. So our podcast is called PWD Allies. So we're following the person first. We're following the person first language of person with a disability. If you wanted to do identity first, it would be disabled person. So you're putting the disability first. You're saying it's important to recognize the disability first and say, like, I'm a disabled person, you're a disabled person, Brent. So we're putting onus, or we're putting emphasis on the actual disability first and saying that's the important bit, right? And I think that's important because when you, like, there's positives and negatives to both of like, there's positive and negatives to the medical model versus social model. There's positive and negatives to the person first versus identity first, and I can get into that. You know, if you focus only on person first language, you're almost you're, like I kind of alluded to, you're minimizing how important or impactful the disability is. Like, you're almost saying, you know, you're attaching the disability to the person and saying, well, it's your identity, it's kind of your fault, it's nobody else's fault, it's you own it. You're the person with the disability, so you own it. That's your identity. But then if you take it the other way and say, I'm a disabled person, if you take that tact, then you're almost saying, like, I'm a disabled person, disabled by what, or by whom?
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Like, the other way around. Yeah.
Like, you're putting the emphasis on the disability, and you're saying I'm disabled by what or by whom? You see, so there's positive and negatives to both, to saying both. Like I know in like I said, in academia and in government, or you know, and in professional circles, we can say, in professional circles, the traditional method is to always use person first language.
Because if you look at like PWD, right? Persons with disabilities, or disabilities with person.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So it's like
it doesn't really make sense,
no,
right?
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, so I mean, you can understand why the person first language was adopted, because it's meant to kind of respect the person, respect the autonomy, but in a sense, in some ways it does the opposite, because like some people have said that if you don't say, for example, if you don't say disabled person, if you don't say it the other way and say disabled person, you're not acknowledging the community of disability, because you're just kind of attaching it to your individualism, and you're not acknowledging the whole community of disability. But if you say disabled person, then you're kind of acknowledging the whole community of disability. But if you just say, I'm a person with disability, you're kind of just saying it's all about me, my identity, and I own it, and it's nobody else's responsibility. You see what I mean? Yeah,
I remember when I went to the train station and had to check in luggage, and right away they said, okay, so here's the disabled person and the disabled person's companion. So right away they said, here's the disabled person. And that's how they identified me. There is, here's the
which actually, to me, it makes more sense, because you're not, like, when you say disabled person, you're not hiding the truth. Like, you're saying, you're putting the emphasis on the disability, which makes sense, right? You should be putting the emphasis on the disability, saying, like, because having a disability kind of sucks, you know. It's it's a significant thing. It's not an insignificant thing, right? So
Well, I mean, you notice how the industry, in general, they'll say the most vulnerable.
yeah,
They won't. They say the a person with disabilities in general. Like it's just in general. Like I mean, I maybe that's just my view on how I'm seeing things, but I just lately I've been hearing on like media they'll say the most vulnerable, the most
yeah.
vulnerable. Why? You know, like is it like an overview rather than focusing on certain I guess not classifications, but they'll say, well, there's disabled people, there's seniors, there's the middle class, there's the
Mhm.
well-to-do, you know what I mean, or there's low income, and I don't know. It's just I think maybe that's just how society has kind of over time have kind of evolved of looking at it as they don't know how to deal with the most vulnerable
Yeah.
in society. I don't know, like.
And I've mentioned this before too, and it is all related. I mean,
Well, I mean, how government deals with it. That is.
people can disagree with what I'm about to say, and that's fine. But I'll make the point that I mean I've said it before. I don't like DEI. I don't like diversity, equity, and inclusion. I mean, on paper, I love the idea. Like, who doesn't like the idea of diversity? Who doesn't like the idea of equity? Who doesn't like the idea of inclusion? Of course, we all like that idea, right?
Mhm.
But when you have DEI, where DEI that doesn't actually mean what it says, or what it imports to mean, when it's kind of this whole big lie. I mean, if it
Mhm.
if it actually meant what it said, if it
Mhm.
actually meant what it said, I support it. But the problem with that is it doesn't actually mean what it says. The problem that I have with DEI is that it actually creates more discrimination. I've said that before. I mean, you're making smaller and smaller boxes for people. You're
Mhm.
you know you're like for example, I said before with my clawback,
Right.
where the government can say, well, if you only had stayed just disabled, Neil, if you only had stayed just disabled, we would support you up to the maximum dollar amount of disability support if you only had stayed just disabled. But because you've checked another box of diversity, equity, and inclusion, of
Mhm.
being a widower now, because you've checked the other box of that, smaller and smaller boxes of everybody, right? The smaller the box, the more
Yeah.
we're going to come down on you with a hammer,
Yeah.
right? That's how DEI is set now. So because in my case, because I'm a widower, they're gonna claw back. They're gonna actually punish me because I fit a smaller and smaller box. And
Mhm.
to me, that's what I see. I see more examples of DEI functioning that way. Unfortunately, that's the examples I see more and more daily.
Yeah, because there's part of the DEI where there's the inclusion part where it just infuriates me. I'll just use one example. We were living in Nanaimo at the time, and we moved to back to my hometown. Yeah, long story short, but we wanted to have more inclusive transit. So we wanted to move from Nanaimo to back to Langley because it was better transit, more rapid transit, be able to get to communities, not feel isolated. But unfortunately, the rent was higher. The rent was higher than what we were paying. And we said, well, we're willing to pay higher rent just to have the convenience of being able to get around, right? And I got lectured. I got lectured by the government, by a ministry, one of the workers at the time, who had said, well, you're going to put yourself into harm's way. You're going to put yourself into a financial situation where it doesn't have to be that way. If you were just to stay put where you are and not move, then you're not going to create a harm for yourself and for Sonia. And I said, well, isn't that my decision, autonomy wise? Like I said, isn't that this should be my decision of what I want to do for myself because I want to feel more inclusive in the community that I want to be in. And again, if you don't do it, then you'll be fine. Or move to a cheaper place. I said, well, it's rat infested. It's got bed bugs. It's got cockroaches. It's got a whole bunch of things. Yeah, but it's cheaper.
Free
You
pets,
know,
free pets, Brent.
yeah, but I mean, it's more that mindset of the way that they're thinking. It's like saying, well, this is what they want, what's best for the person, rather than leaving up to the client to decide what they feel is best.
Yeah.
One, for example, is BC housing. Well, you choose to be in market housing. You could have cheaper housing if you went this way, but you choose to have it this way in market housing. Again, is that inclusion part of
Yeah.
the DEI, right?
And again, it comes back to like it's not discrimination, it's only unfair.
Yeah.
And it's a very fine line, right? Because again, if you take the housing example, which you just said,
Yeah.
I mean the fact that the provincial government has housing where they're only catering to 12 to 15% of the disabled population,
Which is peanuts.
yeah, so it's 12%, 12 to 15% get it, but the other
80 something.
85 to 90% don't get it.
Yeah, big market.
That is not just a vanilla unfairness. That is going a step beyond and saying we're being very targeted. We're being very like again. So to take my example again,
Targeted sports, yeah.
yeah. To take my example again of the clawback, the pension clawback. I mean,
Despicable, by the way.
Again, the way they use DEI is, well, they're saying, well, the fact that your pension, your survivor's pension, proves that you need more support. The fact that proves that you need more support, we're gonna claw that back because you've now proven that you need more support. So we're actually gonna claw that off you now. You see how backwards that is? So that's what I mean about backwards DEI. The DEI does the opposite. It's the opposite DEI now. It's like how far can we discriminate? How far can we discriminate and target and be biased and prejudiced? It's all about piling on the prejudice and piling on the discrimination and like getting people in smaller and smaller boxes to further and further discriminate. That's the truth of it, right? That's the truth of it.
Oh, absolutely. And again, this all stems, everyone. It stems from policies, bad policies and decisions that were made decades and decades ago. I mean, it's like the buying power right now. I don't know who. I've seen so many posts everywhere of people struggling across Canada right now. Things are going to get even worse, right? If these stupid tariffs come in, there's no need for tariffs at all. Like, there's no need for tariffs either Canada or US or either side. There's no need for tariffs, right? People are already struggling economically, and so that's just going to add more problems into society and affect people's lives. And of course, government's going to use that as a reason. Oh, well, economic downturn. Yeah. But I always say be proactive. Like, before it happens that way, you're supposed to take care of your citizens, prepare for any economic downturn, not wait till there's a huge problem. And then they go, oh, yeah, well, how do we fix this problem, right? Again, decision-making, policy decision-making, baby steps. There's more to do. Like I said at the beginning of the show, more to do. I'm not sure if that part was cut out and because I muted.
Yeah.
But when I mentioned at the beginning, in case anyone missed it, it's all these soundbite words. More to do, baby steps. We'll kick the can down the road. When the fiscal situation allows. That was one of my part that really just irritated me so much. When the government talk, it's like government. I call it government speak. Their terminology. Live within your means. And like really, like people are living within their means. When you're on low income, you tend to really know how to live within your means. Someone told me once upon a time, Neil, we actually had that person on as a guest before, so I know that person will probably be watching and going, hey, he's talking about me. Yeah, well, it's like if you give a person $100, right, they're really going to know how to utilize that $100. Now, that person said if that person gave me the $100, I would just put it in the bank. I wouldn't even see it. Like, it doesn't mean anything to me. And so when you raise the rates, people are now able to, meaning the government, you raise the rates up to of a livable income so people can pay their market rent, they buy their basic necessities in life, toiletries, etc., tenant insurance, hydro. I mean, you name it, just your general cost of living. When you raise the rates, people are more inclusive about putting it back into society, back into the community that they live in. Lately, the government's been talking about buy local across the country. Well, how do you encourage people on low income to buy local when a lot of these local stores are charging more? Yes, you can find some bargains. I have a store that's close, very close to where I live, and yes, there are some good bargains. I must admit, but when you don't have the money to buy them, you can't buy them. Sure, it's a great deal, but if you don't have the money,
Yeah,
the government's neglected to deal with it, then you buy local.
let's go quickly back to the screen share from earlier.
Yeah.
Again, I'm bringing up those words again.
Yeah,
And
I call it word salad. Word salad.
And if you agree with the synonyms of, or the like terms of disabled as being incapacitated, challenged, mangled, maimed, infirm, impotent, weakened, wounded, wrecked, unable, if you buy into those terms, and again, this is academia, this is decades and decades of academia. If you buy into those terms, of course you can't really blame the government. I mean, if they're gonna buy into that, the terms of decades and decades and decades of let's buy into the idea of, like, if you're disabled, you're wrecked, you're wounded, you're unable, you're mangled, you're maimed, you're impotent, all those negative things. If you buy into that, of course you're not going to invest in a person that's disabled. You're going to say, well, that disabled person isn't worth the investment.
They're going to look at all these terminology, right? And they're going to say, yeah, but this is what it says. And right now, what we're doing is we're teaching the government that all that stuff, it's file it under G, like file it under G. Listen to lived experience, listen to the person. And this is what a lot of the advocacy groups across Canada, I mean, nurses, doctors, I mean, they've all been saying the same thing. It's not just advocacy groups, government, or policymakers, whoever's telling the government to write these policies or keep them in place. You've got doctors, you've got practitioners across the country. You've got, I mean, I'm not even basically to try to figure out everybody that's involved in these decisions that are telling the government, okay, like, fix the problem. We're all going to be ganging up, right? I mean, we're going to give every government opportunity across Canada to fix these things, because what I see is a crystal ball going forward. I can see a whole movement of disabled people with their allies, PWD and Allies across Canada. A huge movement going forward. If things aren't changed, who knows when that's going to happen? But I hear rumblings. I do hear a lot of rumblings, and it's not good. It's not good rumblings, because people are suffering. I mean, now people that weren't disabled in their lives, they've become disabled, and now they're in the shoes of a person with disabilities. They're in the same fate of looking down within their own eyes, of looking outwards and saying, I didn't know that people with disabilities on income assistance in each province are treated this way. I know I had a person had helped me in the past is now disabled. I didn't know that, and I really I want to thank the person. Just verbally here saying, I want to thank you for your generosity over time. I can't really get into the detail of the person's why things happen, but it's very tragic. But I want to say thank you. And again, that proves the point that people can become disabled in their life at any point of time. And
it's only a matter of time, really. I mean, eventually it's going to catch up to you.
I mean, you could get into a car accident. You could just go down the road, and I've seen some near-ended, like, some situations that could have been very fatal for pedestrians, also innocent pedestrians walking along. Somebody just not paying attention. I actually witnessed an accident a couple blocks down from where I live one time. we had Sonia and myself, we were going to the grocery store and we were crossing the road and we got across. And then I looked and I said, oh, this person was going way too fast. And Sonia goes, oh my gosh. And you know how if you've ever witnessed an accident, it's like slow motion. We saw it literally happen. It was like bang. And these people all looked at me because I said, I think there's going to be an accident. I called it out, and they looked at me all of a sudden like, how did you know that? I didn't know that, but I just saw the action of people's erratic behavior. And I've seen that over time more and more, Neil. People are becoming very more impatient, upset, and understandably, right? I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty that's going on around them. They're economically, maybe physical strain on their jobs that they're doing. They're just running amok. They're trying to get from point A to point B in a hurry because there's not enough time in the day, or they lose their jobs, and then they become disabled. Maybe they're disabilities, or they have disabilities, and they've escalated to a point in time now that they can't even do the work that they used to be able to do, and now they become part of the social safety net onto disability. Yeah. And then the government says, well, yeah, I hear you. There's more to do. Like, raising rates. Now they're in that same situation where, where if it was a pension or as some of our guests that we have on every so often, as Joseph and Tom and a whole bunch of others would basically say the same thing. It's now time to have some kind of form of GLBI or basic income or something like that that's going to take care of people on lower income. I mean, I don't think it should go to, in my view, I mean, some people would disagree. I don't think it should go to some millionaires to have some kind of basic income. No, but I don't know. Maybe it should be channeled for what the person's needs are. Maybe assessed on that.
Well, at the very least, they could at least roll it out to people that have disabilities. Like you have the universal one that says it's available to everybody. But instead of giving it to everybody, let's try a smaller pilot project where you're only delivering it to targeted in a good way this time, like targeted in a good way to people with disabilities, not that reverse DEI that I was talking about earlier.
Like it should go targeted to people with disabilities, and like just for instance in each province, and rather just a small portion of the people with disabilities in the province, or people on low income or seniors, and have it run for a good period of time, not just 6 months or a year, and go, oh. Now, wasn't that nice? Okay, we're going to take this away, but replace it with, if it works, great. I mean, but replace it. And if they find that it's not working for whatever reason, top the income up. So now that you're now going to be equal to no less than poverty level. There's something that's going to have to change going forward, because the amounts of how inflation has gone up, when things go up in price, when they get elevated, they don't come back down. And I've noticed that since when I was a kid, what you used to be able to buy for what it is now. And my mom used to tell me stories, well, when she was a little girl, and I'm still baffled, even to this date. I mean, going to a movie theater, Neil, I mean, 20 cents. 25 cents. 25 cents, you could get an extra large popcorn. Yeah. But for 20 cents, you would get to a movie, you would get popcorn and a pop.
Yeah,
imagine. Wow. Like, I mean, wow. I said, wow, what year was that? She goes, well, I was a little girl, but how things changed over time. I mean, I thought it was like a really good deal when it was $5 to get into a movie, right? I mean, or $6.50, right? I remember that. And now it's like, I don't even know what it is. Probably like $13, $14 or something just to get to the movie, right?
There's a couple of things I wanted to acknowledge, Brent. Is that our live chat is just hopping. There's lots of activity in the chat. Wow. It's actually so busy that I can't keep on top of it, but I love it.
Everybody for tuning.
We have Inga Klaus. I see her comment. She says, "Press the like button, please." So and that's great, Inga. Like, if more people press the like button, it just helps the algorithm. It pushes out the content more. So all that helps. All these comments help. So that's great. The more lively we are, the better it is for the channel. So I wanted to acknowledge that. Welcome everybody that's in the chat today.
It's wonderful that there's so many people jumping into their chat session and she voicing their feedback on the content. And again, like I say it many times on the show, and I will keep saying it. I just want to see our society across Canada, and around the world. Around the world. We focus on PWD Allies in Canada exclusively, but I don't always say that it has to be like a border in between Canada and around the world for PWD. Like if you're anywhere in the world, and you're watching this, and you want to reach out and come on to our show, or you're an ally of a person with disability, reach out to us. Like our show is growing more and more and more, and it's very popular. We don't discriminate.
We've got some good guests coming up down the pipe. By the way, we've got some really good guests.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, like Tamara, like we said, is going to come on Friday. And I did want to make the point. We're almost at the end of the hour, actually, and I know I was muted for like 10 minutes, but but anyway, I wanted to make a quick, maybe 5-minute comment, or hopefully less, actually. Again, the reason why we're doing why we're doing today's show is I wanted to show how all of this baggage of what disability is, or how disability is actually defined, how all that baggage translates into discrimination, whether it's intended or not intended. How things are defined rightly and wrongly, how it directly impacts discrimination. Because and I don't know how often I've shared this on the podcast, but I tried to become a elementary school teacher. Like I went to university and I finished it. I got my degree in a Bachelor of Arts eventually. Like I did finish a degree, but that wasn't my original intent. My original intent was to become a school teacher for elementary. That's what I wanted to do. So I went into teaching for that, and so this is back when I was about 25. So we're going back like 32 years. 32 years we're going back that I decided to do this. So I went to UBC, and I went into the teachers program, the student teachers program, and I got through the first year and a half okay. They did the first practicum. It was a shorter practicum. I got through that fine. I got through all my courses fine, no problems at all. And then we got to the last practicum, and that is where I experienced, for the first time in my life, honest to goodness discrimination. And again, I won't go into like a whole bunch of detail. I'll just say that it was very obvious. Like, for example, I had the teacher that was that I was learning from, the classroom teacher. She was supposed to be my mentor. She would. And actually also the faculty advisor from UBC. You have the faculty advisors from UBC that they team up with the teachers. So there's two of them that are giving you advice on how you should properly teach and stuff like that, right? They're grading you on your performance basically the whole time.
Interesting.
And so they would say things like you should really have better posture in front of the class, Neil. Your bent legs are the kids are getting what's the word, they're getting uncomfortable. They're getting uncomfortable with your bent legs, Neil. And like they would just say that to me like right up front. Like they didn't even try to say it like to hide it. It was like it's like your bent legs are a problem.
Oh man!
And it's like, well, I'm sorry, I can't control my bent legs.
You can't change who you are.
Yeah, I can't control my bent legs, and I would push back and say, well, I'm pretty sure the kids don't have a problem with my bent legs, but it sure sounds like you have a problem with my bent legs. you know, but
Yeah.
I couldn't be that direct with them.
Right.
I didn't actually come out and say it like that
No, no.
that strongly, because if I did, I'd be showing
Yeah.
the door
But,
kind of thing,
but you
right?
but you wanted to.
I wanted to say that. I
Yeah.
wanted to say
Yeah.
that. But
Exactly.
I knew that the kids didn't have a problem with my bent legs. It was those teachers, the two teachers that had a problem with my bent legs, and also too, like, my cerebral palsy meant that I have really messy writing. So, for example, one of the things I really wanted to do was I wanted to get another student that had better writing to come up and help me write on the blackboard. And both of them said, you can't do that, Neil. You can't do that.
Oh.
If you can't write on the blackboard, you shouldn't be a teacher. Like,
Oh my
they would
gosh.
just blatantly say that kind of thing too, right? So
Wow.
it goes back to those definitions again of, like, there's 30 years or more of this baggage where you know, whether it's the school system, whether it's employers, whether it's the government, they kind of have this feeling of entitlement that it's like, well, if you're disabled, you don't really deserve that. We're entitled to be discriminatory towards you. Like, I mean, and they won't say that. They won't actually say that, because if you say that, then it's like, you know what I mean? Like, you can't say we're openly being discriminatory.
I had an example of when I was a kid in elementary school. They would teach me how to touch type, and I was told to go into another room with a TA, a teacher's assistant. And so she would come in and she would teach me this and that. And she would actually put a book over top of my hand so I couldn't see where I was typing. And that's how they would teach me. And I said, well, but I want to do that in the class. Well, and then teacher came in, well, hang on. So she'd go and ask the teacher, and she'd come in, oh, yes, Brent, you had a question. I go, can I do this in the class? Well, we don't want the kids to feel uptight. They'd feel uncomfortable. Why would they feel uncomfortable?
Yeah.
Well, it's just that way. And I go, so I remember, I'm glad that you mentioned that. So I remember back and I said, well, I want to ask the class if they feel uncomfortable. No, Brent, it's just that way. No, please don't. So the TA said, Brent, I mean, the teacher's right. Maybe we'll just leave that alone. I think I should ask the class. And so the teacher and the TA they were really agitated with me. Like, in other words, Brent, stop it.
Yeah.
I got out of my chair, and we were like in another little room. It was kind of cool in there anyway. So I went in. It was so nice and warm. I said, hi. Hi, Brent. Hi. Welcome back. I go, do you all feel uncomfortable if I come in here and learn how to touch type while you both are all reading off the overhead projector? And no, why are you in the other room? And then that looks could kill. The looks could, oh man, they glared at me. And, like, in other words, how dare you do that?
Yeah.
And so I end up being back in the class.
You're not allowing us to discriminate against you, Brent. How dare you?
Yeah. So
let us discriminate against you, please.
Yeah. So they actually brought me back into the class, and actually I sat in the back. I said, but I want to sit with the rest of them. No, you're going to sit in the back. So they still, at least I got to sit in the class, but they got me sitting in the back doing that. So I wouldn't be a distraction to them. But again, I felt for myself, I wanted to be included. I didn't want to be excluded. You know, that was more, I mean, way back before I learned about advocacy and why things are happening the way they are. And I mean, history needs to be corrected, right? I mean, it needs to be changed going forward. And I mean, people power, like people power, when I say disability, people with disabilities, like, that our lived experience, our power of who we are, and letting, like, the policymakers, government know that maybe what was written decades and decades ago, centuries ago, it's not okay now. Like, we need to change things going forward. We can make a better society for everyone. And I always believe that to treat people with respect and dignity, and you know, your integrity of who you are should shine. It should shine. Be who you are. Let it shine through. Let it blossom. And the best way you can. But we need government to actually realize and work with the situation and change these policies, these decision-making situations. Is it not just for people with disabilities? Is it healthcare? Is it transportation? You name it. I mean, there's so many barriers that are in place of why things are happening the way they are. when I hear on the news about hospitals being closed, Neil,
Yeah.
it's really disheartening because people who are disabled or seniors living in a rural area and their hospital is closed down and they have a medical emergency. Oh, I'm sorry, our ER is closed. You got to travel for minimum an hour
Yeah.
to another community. What if there's no transit? What
Yeah.
if there's transportation to get you from point A to point B?
Yeah.
Have to rely on a neighbor to basically take you there. That'll be into another segment that we'll do on a show. I want to dive into about um, basically the transportation part of the healthcare closures and the hospitals of accessibility. I think that would be a good show. I think
Yeah, it'd be a great
yeah,
show.
yeah,
And again, the reason why we did today's show is that I wanted to do it as a kind of an appetizer for when Tamara Taggart comes on Friday.
yeah,
This whole thing of like, let's define what disability is,
mhm,
or maybe shouldn't be.
yeah,
And this is what I wanted to say to governments and employers and society as a whole is, let's start being more countercultural,
mhm,
and start to question the word clouds that are in our dictionaries, in
mhm.
our academia, that says that if you have a disability, you're wrecked, or you're impotent, or you're weakened. You know, all that kind of stuff gets passed down decades and decades to our policies,
Mhm.
to our society, that says, if you have a disability, you're not worth it. You're not worth the investment. People that have a disability are not worth the investment.
Here's a here's
Yeah.
another one though, Neil, is I had an employer many years ago where I had to change the mindset of the employer, uh, and the employer was so ableist at the time, where I said, "Well, can you just get a large like a font to blow it up the screen?" Well, they had to get a magnifier, and they actually had it cost the company $1,000 per monitor to put this device over top. And what it did, it blew up the print, not just for me, but it actually helped all the other
For the other
employees
staff.
who
Yeah.
were actually like from like standing in a way a distance, and they were reading orders, making stuff, but they were able to stand way back there and go, "Oh yeah, can you go and so and so cut up such and such stuff because we got an order coming in." They could actually see that further back, but the employer didn't want to do that at first because they said, "I don't want the other employees to feel treated differently, Brent. You are the one who is disabled."
Yeah.
I go, "I mean, I am the person who has a disability." "No, you're disabled. Like, I'm not sure why you want to work here. I'm not sure if we can accommodate you." And I said, "Well, there's ways of accommodating me if you were to actually work with me and actually listen to what my needs are." And I actually forced them to get that. I said, "If you don't do it, I will walk out the door, and or you can fire me for being incompetent, right?" "Well, I mean, you do have a disability." And I thought, "Whoa, like, dude, like, where are
Yeah.
you going with this?" So I
Yeah.
managed to change it around, and I actually got VRS. I got
Yeah.
VRS involved at the
Yeah.
time,
Yeah. And they
and
were great. They were great.
they believed in what I wanted to do. And going forward, the employer, I bumped into the employer years later, and he thanked me. He thanked me because it actually bettered the environment for so many people with disabilities, who have that lived experience, who will be able to channel that going forward into other industries. And I think that if you really, if the employer really focuses on rather than an inconvenience versus a asset to their company and invest that money into that company, and actually if the person can do that kind of occupation and work with them, it really it's an investment into that person and also into other employees in that company, because now you're going to better their lives too, and actually generate more revenue overall and make a happier environment, not just revenue for the business, but a happier environment for everybody, more
Yeah.
inclusive.
Yeah.
And I think government, the same thing. Like if you really believe in actually putting the money into bettering people's lives, it's the same thing, just in a different talking point here. But you better people's lives. I mean, make transit more inclusive, more accessible. Like right now, I'm in Victoria. I can't get to Duncan because I got Transdev, who is a U.S. company who is contracted providing bus service to Cowichan, between Cowichan and Victoria. Really? Do we have to have a company that's going to be, contracted out? It's like when they had the Fraser Valley strike. It was a U.S. company too. Something different. I think it's called. There's a Fraser Valley something, but I can't think of the name. But anyway, yeah, like it's same thing. Like it causes a lot of problems where barriers where people can't get to and from maybe their employment, maybe they have to go to a rec center, maybe they're going to a hospital, maybe they have a doctor's appointment, maybe they're going to shop or go visit friends. There's so many reasons why people have to get to and from their communities. So when the government has excuses of why they can't do things. I call it as that inclusion, that DEI. There's that inclusion part that really.
Yeah, but let's do the opposite. Let's not actually do what DEI is
that,
supposed to do. Let's do the opposite of it.
Yeah, exactly. And then they say, well, we will let them bargain it out, And again, like I mean, you can't go and visit family. You can't go anywhere. You're trapped, right? You're trapped here on Gilligan's Island.
Yeah.
But anyway, I want to thank everyone for tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed today's show.
I apologize for the 10 minutes or whatever it was that I was muted.
Easy come, easy go when it comes to,
I don't. It won't be muted. It won't be muted on the audio port. Like if you listen back to the, we also just post only the audio, and I don't believe that will be. That should be all listenable. So when I post the audio version only, people will be able to hear that portion that was muted at the beginning of the show.
Yeah. As my favorite line, I pick out of one of our shows that we did recently, and it just cracks me up, and I'm going to end it with this little clip. Minister, it's all common sense.
That's right. Yeah. That's right.
Thanks everyone for tuning in.
Thanks everyone.
Stay tuned to our next show with Tamara Taggart later this week.
That'll be a great one. That'll be a great show. That's Friday.
Yeah, Friday.
Early.
Yes. Early.
Yeah.
Early bird gets the worm.
Okay.
Thanks everyone.
Bye everyone.